Hi students, welcome to the first module dealing with educational interpreting and translations. We're going to be reviewing three modules having to do with educational interpreting. The lesson objectives, first of all, I'm going to stress out the importance of state and federal laws, and a very important term that you need to know is what is the definition of LEP, which is the Limited English Proficient a term that is used for students in both the state and federal level. Tips for educational translations and interpreting for those of you that are working in education. Please, in your discussion, let us know what is it that you're doing, what best practices do you follow. And then we're going to go over some site translation techniques because by now you have practiced a few site translation assignments. I want to start with this pointing out this blooper that was submitted by a student many years ago, but I think it's really important to highlight what are the dangers of using machine translations. And this is clearly an example. This is this student took it from the school district she works. We didn't want to say what school district, but anyways, here they just did a literal translation and they printed many signs with this very wrong translation to post them on the buses. And here is stand clear of door, caution, and then here in Spanish is precaución, estar claro de puerta. So for clear, they use the word claro, like clarity, which does not relate at all to this translation, right? So I put here in this slide what could be a suggested translation, aléjese de la puerta, but let me know if you think of any other ones. Maybe it could be something shorter. And this is just, again, to show why it is so important, especially if you're using now more and more. We are all using, myself included, more and more AI. Before, I would tell the students, do not use AI. You're going to get it wrong. Now I tell students, if you're going to use AI, just make sure you proof because it does return your translation with a lot of mistakes. Sometimes it doesn't do the correct subject verb agreement. And then not only that, but sometimes it uses a wrong word or it hallucinates. So again, I just wanted to point out this example of a very wrong translation in our local district in Orange County. So please make sure if you have any bloopers, you can also share them with the class in the general discussion about Module 1, where you can post anything that you would like, announcements for jobs, internships, anything that's available at the college or outside of the campus that you would like to share with students. So now talking about the laws that are related to educational language access, again, very important for you, and this is going to be in the quiz. What is LEP, Limited English Proficient? This is the term given to all those students and families, regardless of what their native language is, that they do not dominate the English language. And the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, I have the PDF there. I have the PDF also in your module because with the current administration, there's a lot of websites that have been deleted that have to do with Spanish services or what's considered DEI for the current administration. But so I included the PDF. I don't know, because this is the Justice Civil Rights Division. They have not made any changes. It's still the law. And then I also gave you the California here. I want you to see the differences, the California, and I'm going to explain them as well. The language service policy and process for ELPs. Now, according to the Civil Rights Division, does my child's school provide information to me in a language I can understand? But this word right here is key. Must my child's school provide? And the answer is yes. So going back to when my daughters were in elementary, junior, and high school, not so much in high school, but yes, in elementary and in middle school, I used to be part of the PTA, and I used to volunteer 1 day a week in the office and with the PTA. So they would very often, maybe even twice a week, ask me if I could come and translate for them because it was the parent at the front counter asking for information and the person there was not bilingual. So I would come and I would provide information to the parent, about a meeting or about certain things, or maybe make sure that we provided them what we had in print that for information for the parent if they were asking for a meeting or a date or a flyer. However, based on the Civil Rights Division, I was violating the law, right? And I was not interpreting there. I was not teaching interpreting when my daughters were that young. I was doing interpreting for school districts, and I was doing interpreting and translations for many industries, but I was not yet a faculty for this specific industry. So I became faculty for Santa Ana College interpreting and translation programming in January of 2018. But here the law clearly says that yes, okay, the school must communicate to you, to LEPs, if you're an LEP, and your family in a language that you can understand about any program, any service, any letter, anything that you are entitled to, because the other parents are entitled to that information. They have to provide it to you in your language. And then here he gives the list of what is limited, but not is not limited to, and you could go over the list. However, again, make sure that one of this says parent-teacher conferences, they must provide an interpreter. Now, do school districts do it? No. Because I remember having friends that were limited English proficient, and they would tell me, I didn't understand anything what the teacher was saying. The school must provide. And unfortunately, even though the federal law states that the school must provide, many school districts, especially now with the current climate, they do not provide an interpreter. So yes, they are violating federal law. Again, may my child school ask my child, other students, or untrained school staff to translate or interpret for me. In this case, they would ask me, but I had not revealed to them that I had years of experience as an interpreter and translator. I was there as a parent, as part of the PTA, the Parent Teachers Association. And they would ask me, but they were breaking the law because they cannot ask a child. And I've seen, especially when my daughters were in elementary, that the teachers would ask a child to translate, and that's illegal. And here in bold again, they may not rely on students, siblings, friends, or untrained school staff. In this case, I was not untrained because I had years of experience. However, I was not a school employee. Okay, so trained means that you're trained as an educational interpreter. Also very important, I have here the links. I want you to go and see, especially if you're already working in a school district or are considering going into educational interpreting field, please make sure that you have all these links ready and that you know the law. You always supposed to know the law in the industry. What does it dictate, whether you're in medical, court interpreting, or in this case, education? What does the law say about the rights of parents and children? You need to know this. Okay, so this is the Assessment and Language Services Policy and Process of the Department of Education, because it delineates what school districts need to do and where do they need to file the complaint. So again, your assignment, especially if you're interested in the educational field, is to know what dictates this, why are these laws in place in California. Okay, so again, we saw that the Civil Rights Division dictates that it is the law for schools to provide language access to all parents that are LEP and students. And here the Department of Education, again, is saying so. Equal access to its available services and information, meaning everything, right? And that was because of a law. This is the law for those of you that are interested in law and precedents. This is the law and the title that made it accessible to language limited English proficient families and students, and this is the law that they're in compliance with. And here again, it says just, seeking guidance or assistance from the CD, that you can seek guidance, but the schools are ultimately responsible. The state holds the schools responsible. So again, here at the California Department of Education, they're going to request a family, okay, may request to interpret for the person only in an emergency. So remember, I said that a person cannot, if they're not trained, if they're a family member, but the CDE says that only in an emergency or to obtain non-essential information, identifying the language that the person speaks. So here the CDE is saying they will follow up with any individual via certified bilingual employee to find out the nature of the inquiry and provide the necessary information. So at the state level, you can request information as well. And they do provide a lot of information in Spanish. But then here is where it gets tricky. We saw the civil rights and what they say that falls under the law. And then the California Department of Education says, yes, this is what schools need to provide. However, all complaints against a school or a district, anything that has to do with language services needs to be filed directly with the school district. So families don't have that recourse of going to the CDE and say, oh, they violated the law, because they want you to start with the school district. So make sure that you review those links that I provided, federal and state, especially if you're considering or are already working in the educational field. So for those of you that are already working or that are perhaps considering going and starting maybe as a starting career and then moving on to other industries, working in education, the area, this is very important. These are suggestions for you. You have glossaries here in about Module 1. Download them and keep them in your files. There's the Orange County glossary of terms that they developed that glossary, the Orange County Department of Education, a few years ago. So take advantage of that. Don't reinvent the wheel. Also very important, if you're already working in a school district, most of the schools already have the terminology that is used. So don't reinvent the wheel. That's why I posted letters from LAUSD so that you could see the templates that they use. They just continue to use those similar templates. I have friends that work at LAUSD, and the language service division there is amazing. They just continue to use the same templates, and they provide it to the school districts, and the school districts just customize those. So yes, very important. And also the majority of educational interpreters and translators work in the special education program. So that means that there's very specialized terminology that is used for the special education. And in another module, I'm going to explain more in detail what that entails. So here, again, do not reinvent the wheel, because in the modules, please download this if you're considering going into education, you're already working for a school district. This has the terminology that is required for special education interpreting. So instead of looking for what a certain word means that is related to special education, download this glossary. And this is a glossary that was developed at the federal level. In most of the school districts in California have this glossary. Most of the again, the translators and interpreter, they work or provide services to a special education department for individualized educational plans. That's called an IEP. Also very important to know if you're considering going into educational interpreter. This is the individualized educational plan, or IEP. They hold meetings annually, and sometimes even more than one time a year, for the students that are in the special education program. Now, there's many disabilities that fall under the special education program, and we will review those when we review the components of the IEP. Again, do not reinvent the wheel. You have access to this terminology. I'm going to switch now to side translation, because you have done side translation. Thank you so much. I've read your comments. You were already challenged as to try to tackle it one time without looking at the Spanish terminology, and then the second time so that you can have an idea of the time that it takes you once you're prepared, right? So it's showing you a lot of things in terms of preparedness, How do you do this? Do you feel comfortable with the terminology? Some of you, because you're in that industry, you loved it. Others that are not in that industry felt challenged. So regardless, this is done also so that you, regardless of the industry, so that you could learn the techniques, right? And again, you're just rendering something that's in a written text to the source language, to your target language of that person. And we already mentioned that many of us have been unofficial interpreters growing up because we did this for our family members or our parents many times, especially going to the doctors. So just a recap really quick again, this has only to do with a written document, right? And sometimes, yes, preparation, because you prepare the second time, and with little preparation, you were asked to do it. So that way you could start honing your skills. Another thing is that sight interpreting is very, I remember when I used to work in the Department of Social Services in Riverside County, I did sight interpreting all the time, every day with the clients, like, especially with limited English proficient, like, ask them the questions. And sometimes these forms were not in Spanish. Trial preparation meetings. The sight interpreting is key for legal, all of you that are doing legal, in the legal field, or already working with attorneys, or even the paralegals. You do a lot of sight interpreting because you're looking at the forms, and a lot of these court forms are not in Spanish. So you have to translate for your client because you want them to know what the question is being asked. Education, again, like with the IEPs, there's some forms that parents have to know. And of course, healthcare education settings, which is what many of us grew up translating as unofficial interpreters, the side translations for our parents. And again, this is not a written translation. So this is just a side translation, and do not confuse the term with side translation or interpreting for the deaf. So here again, to prepare for a sight translation, you need to review the document to sight translate, first of all, right? You need to know this is, especially if it's not your area of expertise. Some of you might have more expertise in the legal field, and then you're given a medical, form to sight translate, or an asylum, or something else that it's not going to click. So of course, like anything, we're gonna have a learning curve. So you need to review the document. You understand the document. What style are you talking to someone that it's older? Are you going to use the usted when you ask the question? If this is someone young, then are you going to use more informal language? Mental notes are very important as your sight interpreting, sight translating. And remember, I'm so used to using these terms interchangeably, but sight translation. So you are, you're making mental notes, like, how am I going to say this? Because it happens in your process when you're translating this to the person. You're thinking all this, both languages, all this, departments in your brain are opening up and retrieving information. How do I say this? How do I say that? How do I say postal code? So you're gonna again skim for the sentence structure, commas, periods. Is this a sentence? Is this just a word that you're translating? And then you're gonna do sentence by sentence, and by that I mean you're going to go in the order of the form. You're not going to skip, and you're going to try to maintain a steady pace. Do not rush, and you want the person to understand each sentence. I remember a few years back we had some students volunteer for citizenship clinics, and they were provided all the information in Spanish that they needed to ask the participants. And I don't even know if they still have those citizenship clinics, but this was a nonprofit in Orange County. We sent some students to volunteer, but they provided all the forms and all the terminology, so that made it much easier, right? And then again, you have to think about the person that you're doing the service for, because they might have to fill it out on themselves. You might have to help them, and then you're gonna practice out loud a couple times before. And then here I put breakout sessions, because this is the part when I had a breakout sessions. But so this is when you're going to practice, right? And then there are some students that have in the past also created group sessions so that they could practice. But again, I don't require this as a group exercise anymore. I want you to practice it individually. And here, just keep the same register. If you're already translating for this person in usted, maintain the usted subject verb agreement. or if you're doing it more informal, then 2. Here you're going to be parsing, so you're going to be thinking in your mind, do I say, especially because syntax is so different in Spanish, do I say this the subject, or what do I what do I translate first? Sometimes we say the adjectives before or after, so you need to start structuring. There's a lot of process that goes for people think that it's easy, but it's not an easy process. You just need to continue to interpret, because there's a lot of processes that go in the mind that are taking place, so that you could restructure sentence into sentence structure, because you want it to make sense in the target language. An example was when you did the medical questionnaire, and then you were given the Spanish questionnaire. And this is just here an example, one question that I picked from one of the medical questionnaires, right? Do you have a religious, cultural, physical, or other factors that might influence your care? If so, please explain. So when you're doing it right from without preparing, I noticed in the past that some students were struggling, and then when they read the Spanish, they, especially with this one, um, they were I remember some were saying, ¿tiene alguna situación? ¿Tiene algún caso? Because we did used to do this in person or in hybrid. And I just want you to compare both languages so that it could help you. Because here in the beginning, we provide you with the Spanish counterpart. There might be instances where you're not provided, you're just given a translation. We try to always provide you in my class with the counterpart so that it could help you prepare for everything. Like you did, you looked at the SBA business plan guide, and I gave you the Spanish counterpart. That's why I provide also the correction keys. You need to learn how to open them so that you could see the correction keys. Those are just suggestions for you. That way you have something to compare. This is optional. This is again for some of you that are more advanced. You could practice your consecutive or simultaneous interpreting. This is a FAFSA audio, and you could just, for those of you that are in the LITA program, I encourage you to go above Module 1 and look at the CBO products and try to do either the workers' comp or the other legal audio that is there instead of doing the FAFSA. But for those of you that are perhaps thinking of going in education, try to do this financial aid. This is more at the college level. I wanted for you to have also an idea what takes place at the college level, because and at the high school, there's a lot of interpreting at the high school level that has to do with FAFSA and the applications, and also at the college level. So there's an audio there. You can pause it to meet your where you are right now in terms of the time that it takes you to consecutive or simultaneous interpret. But if you don't have experience, start with consecutive. I don't want you to go out of the box. You need to start in the order, because first you need to really hone your consecutive, and that's how you become good at simultaneous. But if you're already experienced, then try to do simultaneous. And again, you stop the audio, and then within that pause, then you interpret, and then you play the audio again. But if you feel that you're prepared, then don't stop the audio during the pause, interpret, and then if it starts playing again, don't worry, just keep doing it and see how well you could do till the end of the audio. But this requires a lot of specialized terminology having to do with college applications. So unfortunately, the federal government has deleted a lot of the websites in the federal government that had to do with FAFSA interpreting for the Department of Education. But there's other resources. So I posted there some things where you could get information on FAFSA and college related terms. In the discussion for this week, I want you to please make make it a point to answer all the questions in the discussion so you can obtain full points, and then reply to 2 classmates by deadline. This is a very important video, one of the best ones that I've found online. So this one tells you what are the best practices for using an interpreter during a parent and teacher conference, because that's also one of the times that the parents and the families are by law required to be provided, if they're LEPs, an interpreter. Here again, just check the module for quiz deadlines and for your assignments, and listen to the weekly audio that is posted there, and reply to students all the time. Again, sometimes I not only post updates about your week, but sometimes I also post information about scholarships or anything else that is going on at the college. So make it a habit to listen to those weekly announcements. Thank you.